Have you ever experienced having so many things to do that you end up feeling so overwhelmed to a point that you're paralyzed because you don't know what to do, you're overthinking it, and you end up not doing anything at all? That actually got me thinking. It's no wonder that the Bible is filled with so many metaphors about us being like sheep. Yes, I said sheep. Like the one they tell you to count jumping over the fence when you can't sleep. That kind of sheep. Psalm chapter 23 is one of the most, if not the most popular chapter in the Bible. So much so that I think anyone who even has the tiniest bit of knowledge about the Bible knows exactly which chapter I'm talking about. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. And the chapter goes on. This entire chapter paints such a beautiful picture and uses such rich imagery. And recently, as I'm preparing for the messages that I will be sharing in church in the next few months, I got so fascinated about the imagery of a shepherd and the sheep, and decided that I want to explore more about this imagery because it appeared so many times in the Bible. So I had to answer for myself the question, why this specific imagery? I think that the first and most obvious answer as to why they had to choose that specific imagery is the geographical relevance of a shepherd and a sheep to the direct audience of the Bible. Israel is a mountainous or hilly region, so their terrain is not really even, and it can sometimes even be dangerous. And while yes, they have fields that are fit for grazing, there isn't really much land that is fertile enough for farming. So it makes sense that pastoralism, or raising herds of cows, goats, or sheep, would be a better source of living. Which means that everyone who is the target audience of the Bible at the time knows at least one shepherd, if they are not a shepherd themselves. So it means that they can easily understand this imagery because they can personally relate to it. But even if you are like me, who obviously is not a shepherd or does not know any shepherd in my life, this imagery still makes so much sense to you because there's a lot of parallels between the behavior and characteristics and even the relationship between the shepherd and the sheep and that of God and us. So now, let us explore the many different aspects that will make us go, oh, wow, I really am the sheep. First, they are directionally weak, meaning they have extremely poor navigation skills. Imagine this scenario. The shepherd takes the flock to the pasture. The sole purpose of the sheep going there is to eat grass. So what will the sheep do? Look at the ground and eat grass. But suddenly this patch is gone. So he will look up a little bit to a nearby grass patch, go there and graze, and so on and so forth until it realizes that it's alone, lost, so far away from the rest of the flock. What will the sheep do? It doesn't have the ability to retrace its steps. It will just be frozen in place, filled with panic and fear because it will not know what to do. That's why it makes sense that in the first part of Isaiah chapter 53, verse 6, it says, "All of us, like sheep, have strayed away. We have left God's paths to follow our own." This must happen so often that in Luke 15, the parable of the lost sheep is dedicated specifically to that topic. That there will be one sheep who will stray away from the pasture, and the shepherd will take the time to leave the 99 to go after that one. And I'm sure that when I said the word shepherd, you already have the image clocked into your head of a person wearing this cloak and holding a staff. The hooked end of that staff is actually meant for guidance. Imagine this. The flock is walking towards a specific direction, and this one wayward sheep decided to stray away. The shepherd will use the hook to bring him back to place. And I can only imagine how many times that has to happen for all the shepherd to have that same tool. And I also remember that in one of my dad's preaching, he mentioned that this is also the same tool that the shepherd will use when, for example, a certain sheep fell into a crack in the ground or on a cliff. He will also use that hook to pull him back up and bring him together with the rest of the flock. Thinking about that, I cannot help but imagine how many times God had to do that for me. I know, I'm 100% sure that I have very poor directional skills when it comes to this life. I don't know where to go. And chances are, there are so many things in my surroundings that easily distract me because I thought that's where I need to go. But I'm also sure that God had to hook me back towards the direction that He wants me to go. And because of that, I also cannot help but marvel at how patient God is with me, with us, to do that every time we stray away. He could have easily let us go, but He didn't. Instead, He always came after us whenever we decide to go our own way. And that's how much He loves us and cares for us. The next thing about sheep is they are utterly helpless. First of all, they have no ability to defend themselves. They don't have sharp teeth, they don't have claws, they don't have camouflage or anything that can help them defend themselves from wolves or bears or lions or thieves. Psalm chapter 23 verse 4 said, "Your rod and your staff, it comforts me." The rod and the staff are not two separate tools, but rather a part of one tool. As I said earlier, the hooked end of that tool is for the shepherd to easily bring back the sheep to the correct direction, while the straight end of that tool is used for defense and protection. It becomes a weapon that the shepherd will use to hit the wolves, the lions, and the bears, or anything that threatens the sheep. Shepherds even station right outside the pen of the sheep, even at night, just to make sure that they are protected and taken care of. So it's no wonder that the rod and the staff would be a comfort to the sheep because of what it provides for them. I also just recently found out that the sheep are so helpless, they don't have the ability to self-rescue. For example, let's say that they trip over a rock and they are now upside down, tipped over. Their backs are on the ground and their feet up in the air. They will remain in that position until someone rescues them because they wouldn't know what to do. In fact, if a shepherd is not paying attention and that sheep remained there, even just for a few hours, that sheep could die. It means that a shepherd's job is no joke because they have to pay such close attention to every single one of the sheep in the flock. And this gets you thinking about the number of times that God has protected us and saved us from anything that could possibly cause us harm. And how during the times when life gets us down and we don't know how we can get back up again, we find ourselves being back up again. And that is God's hand in our lives. Another thing that makes us so similar to the sheep is that they need constant guidance because they don't know what's good for them. Did you know that if a sheep is thirsty, it will drink any kind of water that is right in front of them, regardless of whether that source of water is filthy or clean? That is why it's up to the shepherd to bring them to a clean source of water. And of course, the sheep will also have absolutely no idea when they are already overgrazing a field to a point that it will not sprout any more grass. So, it is up to the shepherd to make sure that he is balancing things out and bringing the flock to different areas to make sure that the grass will still regrow in this area and some other areas. It is the shepherd's responsibility to account for the terrain, to take note of possible danger, and to think about the changing of the seasons as he is taking care of the flock, because otherwise, they will not survive. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who went after certain things that I thought were good for me or I thought I needed because it looks good to me, but apparently it's not. So I'm thankful to God for His constant guidance and bringing me away from the things that in the end will actually cause me harm. Would you consider yourself as a highly anxious person? If you do, you have just become more like sheep. Sheep are so sensitive to sudden and loud noises, unexpected change, even shadows, and it causes them a great deal of stress. In Psalm chapter 23, verse 2, when David said, "He leads me beside still waters," the use of still waters there is not just because it's beautiful in terms of painting the mental picture of a shepherd and a sheep's relationship, but rather because it's actually necessary. The sheep will never drink from raging waters because that will scare them. They specifically need still waters for them to be able to drink. Stress has such a high impact on sheep that it will actually affect their nutrition, reproduction, and overall health. So saying, "He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters" is actually God taking such good care of us so that we can calm down, rest, and have peace to have a better quality of life. Because the thing is, if an overstimulated sheep will be a malnourished sheep, an overstimulated believer will also be a malnourished believer. So what about your life is causing you to be so overstimulated that it's affecting the quality of your life. Maybe you have to listen to the voice of your shepherd. Speaking of the shepherd's voice, one fascinating thing about the sheep is that they are able to pick out the sound of their shepherd's voice even in a place where there is too much noise. How does this happen, you may ask? It's a product of many different processes. The first one being what we call the auditory imprinting, meaning that ever since they were young, the shepherd's voice was the only voice that they have heard. And the thing is, they will hear this voice every single day. And it's not just that. The voice is not only a voice, but this voice is followed with a certain action that yields a certain result. Like, for example, if the shepherd will make this particular sound or say this particular word, he will do this particular action, which may then lead them to having food or drinking water or going to this specific direction. So, yes, the sheep might not be good at many other things, but in this, they are particularly good, especially because they are very relational creatures. That is why John chapter 10, verse 27 makes such perfect sense. When it says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." If we really are the sheep of his pasture, we will recognize his voice because he has been with us and has chosen us since the beginning. And since we are on the topic of the sheep being relational creatures, they actually have a tendency to follow the herd. That is because being a member of a herd provides them with a sense of safety, warmth, and guidance. And this is for better or for worse. And by that I mean that if this certain herd decided to go in this direction, and we have this sheep that's falling a little bit behind, he will just go where that herd goes, regardless of whether the herd is going into the wrong or dangerous direction. So it's definitely so good that the shepherd is paying such a close attention to the sheep that when that happens, he will just use his staff to lead them back to the right direction or call after them so they can hear his voice. And if that still doesn't work out, whoever strays away, he will go after them and bring them back. Are you a member of a flock right now? I hope that you have found a flock that provides you with that sense of warmth and safety, and they are the kind of flock that listens to the voice of the shepherd and leads you towards the right direction. The last thing that makes us so similar to the sheep is that they are not able to rid themselves of their own burden. We all know that the sheep is the source of wool, and it can get to a point where it's so big and heavy that it starts to collect dirt or parasites and even unnecessary moisture. Unlike certain birds who can pluck their own feathers or other animals who naturally shed their fur, the sheep don't have the ability to take their wool away. That's why they will need the help of the shepherd to do regular shearing, which of course will be very uncomfortable for them. But it's a necessary process of not only lightening the burden, but removing something that is not doing the sheep any good. And this teaches us that we have to regularly come to God and submit to His shearing. We should let Him help us to unburden ourselves. If I were to summarize every similarity that we've enumerated between the sheep and us, it's in this, that the sheep were never made to lead themselves. In order to survive, the sheep needs its shepherd in the same way that we need God to survive. Instead of ending this episode with a prayer, I hope that you can join me in welcoming God and appreciating Him as the shepherd of our lives by being in a spirit of worship as we sing the song called Shepherd of My Soul.
Shepherd of my soul, I give you full control. Wherever you may lead, I will follow. I have made a choice to listen for your voice. Wherever you may lead, I will go. Be it in the quiet pasture or by a gentle stream, the shepherd of my soul is by my side. Should I face a mighty mountain or a valley dark and deep, the shepherd of my soul will be my guide. The shepherd of my soul will be my guide.
Thank you so much, friend, for sticking around until the end of this episode. I hope that you find a new sense of appreciation for the peace, the joy, and the comfort that comes with being a part of God's pasture. And may you always claim in your life Psalm chapter 23, verse 6. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This has been your girl KJ for the KJ Lifestyle Podcast. See you guys again next time.